difficulties, but this is uploaded on RamseyNet. So with that, Dr. Parveni.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Madison. I think we will start by doing a quick introduction here. So I'm going to start. My name is Annie Parveni. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer. Go to bed.
I'm Beth Toll. I'm the Deputy Director of Human Resources.
Joanna Berg, County Manager.
Mary Jo McGuire, County Commissioner, District 2.
Rafael Rodriguez, District 5.
Mike John, District 6.
Victoria Reinhardt, District 7.
Krista Martinson, District 3. Thank you, Dr. Parveni. That's how you know you're a good wingman. I forgot introductions. You did it right away.
Curie Singh, Policy and Planning.
Larry Timmerman, Policy and Planning.
Dana Damascus, Director of Nutrition and Practice. Stephanie Lennon, Commission.
Julie Wood, Planning Manager, Policy and Planning. Angie Patrick, Information Administrator, Policy and Planning.
Tracy Sherburne, HR Supervisor. Norman Holmes, HR Supervisor. Karen Francois, Deputy County Manager for Information and Public Records. Tina Rock, Interim Director for Veteran Services and also sending in. Lydia Durham, Policy Planning.
All right, now back to you, Dr. Parveni. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair Madison. All right, so this is just a general overview of our workforce data, similarly to what we've done in the previous years. The actually provides our annual updates on the workforce statistics. This provides a demographic breakdown of county staff and leaders, but also we will be sharing our 2023 data on new hire separations and promotions. We'll also be sharing some ways we're working to continue to improve some of the numbers that you will see today. I think we're quite excited with what we're seeing. The trend continues to, tick upwards. And so there are also some really good solutions that the talent priority team has been working on to try to resolve some of those changes within our data. So I'm going to start by just giving you a quick overview of what we'll be doing. I will be doing the presentation of most of the slides that you see here today. Kyrie and Larry will provide us with analysis on partnerships, progress, and portal. The workforce statistics will be Beth and I. 2023-2024 human resources achievements. This is going to be with respect to the talent priority initiatives. And then we will leave that to you for questions and discussions. I'm going to hand it over to Larry.
Excellent. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Larry Timmerman. I'm a Planning Manager in Policy and Planning. I'll take you through the partnership and the progress slides and turn it over to Kyrie Singh to talk about our open data portal and where you can find all this excellent information. And then we'll turn it back to Human Resources. So in the partnership area, taking us back a few years, Ramsey County became a member of the first cohort of the Anti-Racist and Economic Trust, as you recall.
Why are you doing it? You're going to change the page. Just let us know a little bit of that.
Oh, excellent. Yes, I am on page 3.
Okay.
I will do that.
Just so that we all make sure.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner.
As you remember.
So the work with the Economic Trust, the Anti-Racist Economic Trust, we focused on areas of improvement in diversifying our staff, our retention, recruitment, and diversification of our leadership. And we also, there's another component of that was on diverse spending. So there were really 2 pieces of that. For today, just to think about all the work that was done over those 3 years with the trust around establishing goals to improve on our diversity and the ways in which we recruit staff into the organization and retain staff. In addition to that, there's an external collaboration around the federal standards that are changing. I'll just touch on that now and then I'll bring that back up. The federal government, for the first time in over 20 years, is expanding its collection of data. And so we're going to have a new category for race and ethnicity, the Middle Eastern and North African category. In addition to that, there will be an opportunity to select all that apply. So the way that you respond to that will be different. And there will be subcategories. So something that looks more like the American Community Survey. I bring that up because that's the direction we're going as an organization. And so we have participated in that work. We've attended town halls. There've been listening sessions, I think nearly 100 of them from the federal government. This was very thorough over 2 years. So I wanted to highlight that as an external opportunity that we're working on internally to bring to the data in this work and across programs. Partners working together, our service team, I'll take you back 2 years. It took until late spring, early summer to get this report out. And so we made some changes a couple of years ago. We made this feature on our open data portal, so there isn't a printed report in the same way. We also worked with the data with human resources and policy and planning and partners across the organization too, to make sure that we were getting accurate data in the most timely way possible. So we documented the process. And now last year, we were able to get it out by the end of February. This year it was out on February 8th when we launched the supplemental budget process. And the data was being reviewed already in January. So just to give you a sense of, we want this information in the hands of the organization broadly as they think about supplemental budgets, all the other work that they're doing. And department performance measures, just to reinforce building the countywide culture of performance and improvement. Departments are reporting on the diversity of their staff, their leaders, and the turnover at each department level. So you hear that in board workshops. You'll hear some of that come out this summer and fall as part of the supplemental budget process, as some of the service teams are also measuring aspects of that. So just to highlight that here, I'm going to go to slide 4. So this year, some progress we've already made. Human Resources asked staff as they interacted with the open enrollment for benefits this year to update the information on gender and diversity, so race and ethnicity. And through that, they expanded the gender identity question. And so we'll see more of that as that's built out and we get more respondents. The developing the further process to further disaggregate race and ethnicity, we're tethering that in the same way to what the federal requirements are going to be. And we can expand on that even beyond what the federal government is changing to. The good news is our reporting is going to be linked to that. So there won't be any issues once that's realized. We'll be expected to do it that way. The one distinction I want to make clear, we can add categories. So we don't have to use only the ones that are being asked. So in much the same way some of our state agencies already do, an example of that would be Hmong. Hmong probably wouldn't show up nationwide. It will show up in the way that we collect data. So just to give you a sense of how that can look different. We're seeking partners for comparative analysis. Actually, Human Resources has already been a partner in this regionally. The shortcoming of the regional effort around this is that it's not done every year. So we don't have comparative data every year for diversity of staff with partner counties, turnover and things of that nature. So our most recent report on that is 2022 data. We're looking to be able to do that annually. And part of the way we'll do that is through the Racial Equity Index, something that we partnered with in the first version of this from the Center for Economic Inclusion. We know that some of our neighbors are involved already in this, and we'd like to get as many as we can because it allows us to compare ourselves against partner counties, counties with similar, maybe not similar demographics, but at least some similar overlap, and ones that share borders with us, especially, if not more broadly. So on the developing partnership piece, we're hopeful that we'll be able to do that annually. It was actually another county that stepped up and pulled the data together. And so if we can get them to do that annually ahead of our process, then we'll be able to bring comparative data to you. If they don't do it, we're going to look to do it ourselves. So, and the last piece, just areas to improve. I've highlighted a few. We've become more efficient. We think that we have the cleanest data set that we've had to date. So we're going to keep those aspects of it, but we are working to figure out what additional information you all would benefit from knowing as it relates to this. We've gotten some feedback already. It's great. Keep that coming in. And look to the portal. I'll turn it over to Kyrie Singh, our data and policy analyst, and she can show you where that's at. And that'll be slide 5.
Well, Larry touched on this briefly already, but this is the second year that we have published the report fully on the portal. As an access point for anyone, it makes it very easily accessible when we need to share with community or just internally as well. It's very easy to share with a link, and then also kind of beyond what you would see in the report, there is data sets that you can access and manipulate on the open data portal and make different visualizations or download it and put it into an Excel file. You can kind of dive in deeper and answer some individual questions on a department level doing this. The data sets on the open data portal go back to 2019, but there are reports shared on ramseycounty.us going back to 2017. What you see on this slide is the landing page for the report in the portal. We will be focusing today on the countywide level of workforce statistics, but every service team also has their own individual page that also includes a department level breakdown of the demographics as well. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Human Resources.
Thank you, Kiri and Larry. And so we'll dive into the data that was collected. So let's start with employees over time. So in 2023, the Ramsey County full-time and part-time employees were about 3,723. That's down about a few numbers there. In 2022, it was 3,780. Employees by race and ethnicity. Year-end percentages of racially and ethnically diverse employees remained the same. Within the last 7 years, it actually exceeded 30%, so we've remained steady there. That's good news for us. And then since the year end of 2022, the percentage of racial and ethnically diverse employees has more than doubled, from 15.8% to 40%. So it's remained steady as well. So we haven't seen any changes there. The county civilian workforce, talking about the county as a whole, not necessarily a workforce within, but the county civilian workforce includes 34.9% racially and ethnically diverse individuals. That's a drop from last year of about 1 percentage point. It was about 35.3% last year in 2022. So that's our workforce population within Ramsey County as a whole. It's page 6. Let's go to page 7.
Yes.
Can I get those numbers again for the number of staff in 2022 was 3,780. What is it in 2023?
3,723.
Thank you.
So that reduction, I just want to clarify, is probably when we did cleanup, remember at the end of the year during the budget, we cleaned up some vacancies, mostly from people who were retired from the care center. So it wasn't that anyone got laid off. I just want to be really clear about that.
And fair, Commissioner, that's exactly it. It's the filled positions at the end of the year. So December 31st, positions filled at that moment.
No, it was the care center, the care center.
A lot of changes still happening. So let's take a look at page 7 by race and ethnicity. Human Resources asked staff to update their race, ethnicity, and gender as part of the open enrollment process in November of 2023. In 2024, additional data will be gathered to further disaggregate the staff diversity. At the moment, we have about, at year end of 2023, we have 3.1% of our county's workforce did not specify. That is actually down. It was 3.3% last year. And I think the move by HR to have staff make those changes within the system actually helped. So we will continue to encourage staff to make those changes so we get the numbers through the remaining 3.1% that we don't have right now. 56% of the county's workforce reported being white, not Hispanic. So the past 4 years have been consistent with the percentages of employees in each race and ethnicity from 2020 to 2023. 5 years ago, prior to the pandemic in 2018, 34% racially and ethnically diverse white and non-specified employees made up 60% of the county's workforce. 10 years ago, in 2003, was 16% racially and ethnically diverse white and non-specified employees made up 84% of the county's workforce. I think there's been a shift due to the work that's been done to increase the diversity within the county. So you can see that reflected here. So let's go to page 8. The rates of diversity in new hires continue to trend higher than the diversity of staff overall. And again, it's all work with respect to our mission, vision, values, work done to make sure there is more new hires and retention of racially diverse and ethnically diverse employees. 476 new employees were hired in 2023. 266 were racially and ethnically diverse, 56% of the 476. However, though, 465 were hired in 2022, and 257 were racially and ethnically diverse at 55%. So you will see a slight upward, it's slight taking the percentage of new hires that are racially and ethnically diverse. So racial and ethnically diverse employees were hired at a rate more than 15 percentage points higher than the overall diversity of the organization or the county civilian labor force. That's an increase of about 1 percentage point from 2022. So racial and ethnically diverse hiring has remained about above 55% since 2019, peaking at 60% in 2020, 2021. Let's go over to the next page. Yes. I'm having technical difficulties here.
On page 9.
Okay. So promotions by race and ethnicity. In 2022, I'm going to give you the numbers for 2022, then we'll look at the numbers for 2023. There were 362 promotions in 2022. 200 of those were racially and ethnically diverse candidates, and at 55%. In 2023, we had 239 promotions. 114 promotions were racially and ethnically diverse at 48%. So we've seen a slight decrease in that number, about 7 percentage points in both promotions and of racial and ethnic diverse employees. I'll give you the other number for 2022 as well in comparison to 2023 when it comes to combination of hires and promotions. 715 new hires and promotions. In 2023, the county hired and promoted 382. 53% of those were racially and ethnically diverse employees. In 2022, new hires and promotions were 827. At 457 of those were racially and ethnically diverse employees at 55%. So we've seen a 2 percentage point drop in 2023. So page 10. Former leaders, page 10. Supervisors mostly steady in recent years. We've had, that particular area has been quite steady, but we're experiencing diversity gains for both managers and directors. The total number of employees or directors, the total number of directors, managers, and supervisors in 2023 were 600. In 2022 was 658. So there's a slight drop there in that number for 2023. But upward trends in diversity from 24% at year end 2018 to 29% at year end 2023. That's a slight increase of about 1 percentage point from 2022. In 2023, year end percentage points of racially and ethnically diverse leaders were by group were 33% of directors. That remained steady from 2022. 29% of managers. That is a 3% increase. For 2023, it was 26% in 2022. So we've seen pretty good increase in the managers area, and 29% of supervisors actually remain steady. So we'll move on to page 11. Officials and administrators. year-end percentage of racially and ethnically diverse employees in the equal employment opportunity for category of officials and administrators. By year-end 2023, the percentage of racial and ethnically diverse officials and administrators decreased by 2 points, 2 percentage points, to 27%. It was 29% in 2022. And you will see that with the numbers of just a general decrease in not only the employee population, but also in some other areas that impacts this. In 2017, the percentage was less than 10%. That remained steady. At year-end 2001, the percentage was 1.4. So from 2001 to date, we've seen a tremendous increase, but it's remained steady thus far. So let's move on to page 12. Female employees. 68% of total new hires were female in 2023, 68%. 65% of promotions were female. However, there is a slight increase in our new hires in 2023, but a 2 percentage point drop in female promotions. While we have 68% in 2023 as compared to 66% in 2022, for new hires, female new hires, we've had a slight drop in promotions for females. And you also notice that in the other areas that were mentioned. So 2 percentage points in 2022. The percentage of female employees in the county's workforce has been at least 60% for the last 5 years, so that has remained steady. In the county, the civilian labor force is 51.4% female. In 2022, it was 49.9%. So that's why you see an uptake in female hire, because the percentage of females in our civilian workforce has also increased. Let's go to page 13. Female formal leaders. The percentage of female formal leaders has increased slightly, but remained consistent over the past 5 years. In 2018, 55% of directors and 51% of all female leaders, of all leaders, were female. That was in 2018. Today, in 2023, 58% of directors are female. That's an increase from the previous years, mirroring the overall percentage in the county's workforce, as well as the demographics of the community we serve. So the increase in the female population, the workforce population in our community, is also reflected in this number. 54% of total female leaders in 2024, that was the same in 2020, sorry, in 2023, that was the same in 2022. So there's really no change in that area. So let's go to page 14. Female employees by EEO4 categories. 57% of officials and administrators are female. So today, within Ramsey County, our employee workforce, 57% of our officials and administrators are female. That is an increase of 3 percentage points from 2022. So that we've seen some really good gains in some of those areas as reflected in the general civilian population. Combined, more than half of the county's female employees are employed in the EEO4 category of professionals, which is 43%, and paraprofessionals, 21%. Really no change from 2022, so that remains steady. Yeah. So it remains steady there, so no change. About 67% of Ramsey County's professionals are women, and about 76% of paraprofessionals are women, respectively. The highest concentration of female employees is found in the EEO4 administrative support category, 79%. So administrative employees are 79% of our employees. That's a decrease of about 6 percentage points from 2022. So we've had a decrease in that area. However, though, with the lowest concentration in skilled craft at 5%, that's an increase of about 1% from 2022. So the skilled crafts slightly taken upwards, and we have our administrative support going down. Let's go to page, yeah.
Can you tell me skilled craft? What did that include?
So I want to give the example of what a skilled craft is in that area. based on what we took.
The skilled craft, as I understand it, would be like an electrician, just as an example of a skilled trade.
So like engineers,
Being
electricians.
electricians in our AEO category, these are considered skills, specific skill sets.
Any other questions before we- okay, go ahead.
It's a predominantly male-dominated area, so that's why we're excited to see an upward take in our female population there. Slow, but it's happening. Yeah. So we'll move on to page 15. Employees by generation. The county's workforce is comprised of 5 generations with an average of age of 45.3. Baby boomers generation continued to fall to just below 16% at the end of 2023. And we know that because there's a lot of retirement also happening. Generation X remains at 43%. Generation Y, or millennials, increased by 1% to 38% of the workforce. Generation Z continues to populate the workforce, increasing to about 3%. So we're seeing some uptick there, and that's one generation we hope to increase within the county. Let's go to page 16. Employee turnover. Turnover is calculated dividing the number of separations by the year end total of full and part-time employees. During 2023, turnover was about 13.7% compared to an average of the previous 10 years of 11.5%. It was about 18% in 2022. So we've seen a decrease in that number by almost 6 percentage points within the last 1 year. Our hope is that we will be able to take it to less than 10% within the next year or two, to bring that number as close as we can, even much lower than 10%. 2021 and 2022 stand out as each having turnover rates of more than 4 percentage points higher than any other year in the previous 10 years. And we know that because of the pandemic. So we've had a lot of issues. And the funding, there was also, we have the care center, there was a lot of funding, part-time employees to them hired during that period.
We still have a number of employees that are on that ledge, right? Right, where that was funded from ARPA dollars.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, there will be a tip, so.
Yeah. And that, you're right about that, Chair. So you will still see some gradual, whether it's voluntary, it's involuntary turnovers or voluntary turnovers happening with respect to that. So let's move on to page 19. 17?
Different numbers.
Yeah, you're right, you're both right. Everybody.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, you're
17. Separations. So this is where again you will see that number that Chair just talked about. So overall, racial and ethnically diverse employee separations decreased by 4 percentage points in 2023 from 2022. 51% racial and ethnically diverse employees separated. Percentage of voluntary diverse separations increased by 3 percentage points, and percentage of involuntary diverse separations decreased by 18 percentage points in 2023. So the involuntary decreased, and voluntary increased by 3 percentage points.
So maybe just spend a moment, because the slide is hard for us to read if we've got printed ones. Can you just talk a little more, obviously, you're now doing exit interviews as well, that we didn't always practice that. So what are we seeing on the types of separation? Can you just go a little deeper?
So the good news with the exit interview, we still don't have a robust exit interview. Actually, it's part of the talent priority work. So it's being built as we speak. We both stay interviews and exit interviews. So the good thing about that is it's going to be automated. We do exit interviews, but it's so minimal that we can actually use that number to really tell why employees are leaving. So that's one. Hopefully in the next couple of months, we should be able to launch our exit interview and stay interview portal on YouGov.
Yep, to be end of
Yeah.
quarter, of this
Yeah.
quarter.
Yeah, so we will, in 2024, you will see a difference in this number. We'll be able to give you more as to why people are leaving. One other thing that we're also looking at is just general perception as to why. So an engagement survey is another thing that we talked about. It's apart from the exit interview information, the engagement survey is not until 2025. The funding is actually in 2025. But we hope to do something simple in 2024, just a general survey, just to get an idea to support our exit interview. So the perception is also just as important as the numbers that we get from our exit interview. It's not a guarantee that all employees who are leaving, but involuntarily or voluntarily will do the exit interview. So it's important to also get these other numbers to support that.
See, I knew this would get us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm thinking that hopefully our directors, even though we're not categorizing it, we're not putting it all into a big system, are they talking to their employees and when they leave, or at least we are encouraging as protocol in our departments that they're talking to people before they leave, like, just for general department improvement. I'm hoping.
Yeah, no, I mean, if employees put in their resignation, supervisors always talk to them.
Okay.
Employees may not want to give a reason as to why they're leaving, it could be for different reasons, right? And so that's why the exit interview, where the supervisors would not see what the employees have provided, is a lot better than, just sitting with employees.
Something that, right, they may not tell you.
Anonymous, yeah.
I think good practices vary quite a bit across departments and for their departments where they have pre-robust processes in places and others that don't, but that's another reason that we're trying to get to this consistent countywide approach.
Okay, appreciate that.
Mr. Jean.
Thank you. I'm just looking at, the involuntary compared to the volunteer separation about like the employees that identified as diverse. Where, it's the gray chart here for involuntary, for that gray section is like during probation of like involuntarily separating. Like I think what I may look at this and interpret this data as is that, maybe it's either a skill mismatch and or a culture mismatch. That doesn't work. So I think, being able to look at that information would just be, that our managers and directors should spend time to look into that, right? And about, in addition to that, about like the type of support that we're lending, especially for racially and ethnically diverse employees to feel like they can fit into the organization.
Probation, discharge, that's correct.
Thanks. I'm also trying to get a handle on, what our board charts look like. And trying to take that data and overlay it with, are there certain areas where more people are leaving? And really where, the line staff, the supervisors, the managers, how it all fits together to see if it's, are we getting top heavy? Are we losing a lot of people, that, just, the stress of the job kind of thing. And so, and I think we could tell that by looking at the picture of, okay, within the departments in Health and Human Services, which is the biggest part of our workforce, are there areas where we should be going, oh my gosh, everybody's leaving here, or trying to go someplace else? Is that something that, that we could get for, a few years in a row, I guess, so that we can see the differences, because just having the data is not going to help unless we can see it going forward. So,
Definitely.
I would like to get that, because I think that's important. I mean, we're hearing from employees a lot about the stress and about, and quite frankly, about it appearing that we're getting top heavy as far as the number of supervisors or managers per the number of employees. and the overtime and a number of different things, and so that's not a good scenario for keeping good people.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Reinhardt, we can go back to 2019, so we'll go back before the pandemic. That'll give you, I think,
Yes.
a cleaner picture, because it gets muddy, and there's some shifts.
I wanna just add on to that, there's perception and there's reality and the
Yeah.
data can reality, right?
Yes.
We still have to address the perception part, especially as we're moving into, we all know this year's contract negotiations. So the increase in context from internal employees to commissioners increases every time there's contract negotiations. So it would be helpful if, Larry, if you could get us that sooner than later. We probably won't have another workshop before that all begins, but if you could just send it to us as commissioners, I think that's really helpful data. So that as we're responding and connecting with employees that we have
I think also, one part that will complicate this is, of course, when you make shifts where people that are doing a certain job and that job classification maybe goes away and new job classifications come in. But so I think trying to do it by department would be helpful, but even if it can get down deeper in that, especially if positions are eliminated, are they really eliminated? Or did they change their title? Or did they move to something else? I don't know that what I just asked you for will get us there, but just so you know what I'm looking for.
There's also the funding part to those positions. They're there for some,
Yeah.
but there's no funds to cover those. So you will see those as empty. But really, no, the positions weren't actually filled. So, and there's that part too.
We've got the numbers that you were giving us are of actual employees. How many positions are vacant? Are they vacant? And, I don't know that we can get to why with that information, but it's still valuable for us
Yeah.
to have that.
I love where you're going. I have not looked at the open data portal on this particular, so I'm confessing. Is that, sorry, I'm really working really hard on it. It's not that, I'm just wondering is on this particular topic, like for instance, when we talked about, after, 2020 and the pandemic, we had a big increase of those temp employees who are mostly people of color when we closed shelter services, right? And so it kind of gives us a blip on the information. I know that because I was here, but how does someone who wasn't know it? Is there narratives on the open data portal when you see those blips, or is it just data? Because I think, unfortunately, data, you can take it lots of ways without the narrative piece.
It's just data currently. There was a narrative piece for last year's, for the 2022 when it actually showed up, but since it doesn't really appear in 2023, it wasn't addressed.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'd say, Madam Chair, if you think it's just a sentence, we can plug it back in.
Yeah.
It might give a better sense of the history. So, because there was a little impact this year, it's not much, and not like it had been.
I think that the narrative piece is as important as the data, so that we don't skew our own narrative when it comes, especially over time, when we look back and someone, we don't remember.
So the narrative, that's where the complexity actually comes in. That's why the engagement survey will be necessary. Because then we talked about perception, right? You'll be able to match that to the information that we have right now. Nobody right now is going to put that anywhere because there's nothing to put. Everyone still works here. But when all of these different things are built, we have the engagement survey. The engagement survey really is one of the most important because there you will see part of the plan will be to, when we have the information that we need, is to really to separate that to the different service units, to the different departments. So each department will have their numbers. And you can actually see a breakdown depending on the kinds of questions we ask. So the questions we ask must actually pull that information out from all those that will be taking the survey. So you will see from each one of when we separate the different departments from the general survey, you'll be able, exactly what you've asked for, you'll be able to see all of that difference in terms of the why, the what's, and the when. So all of that will be identified there because it's anonymous, people will not be afraid to speak. It really helps.
So we're planning to do that survey for exit interviews. I wonder if there's opportunity to, I signed those certificates for 5, 10 year, 15, and we have people who stay 40 years. that we ever ask them why they stay, not just why they leave.
That's what this
Because,
the interview portal is also being built
okay,
as part of our talent priority initiative. So it's both stay as well as our exit interview. So all of those will be automated. Supervisors will not have access to it. That information will be strictly within human resources. The only time that will be discussed, not with the supervisor, but well, it depends. It will the supervisor, but not necessarily mentioning any names. If there's a need for an action to
Mhm.
take place based on the information submitted. So that's when we will present that.
I also think that you could use that data, especially if it's on the positive side, like why do they stay? If we're, seeing a trend over time, well, I'm staying in this department because this supervisor, right? That's an opportunity for us to say, is there opportunity for that supervisor that might have been overlooked or, right, or a recognition of something. I also want us to lean towards the positive.
Yeah.
Because we do have people stay for a very long time.
So the stay interview will provide us with all that information. So that's where the sweet spot will be.
Thank you.
Those were, the information is being brought forward because we'll be able to see what types of positions. And one thing that I have heard concerns about, and not just in one area, is that some of the admin, case aides, administrative assistants, people that can assist with the workload, that those are being eliminated, and it's a little concerning. So seeing at that level, well, I guess that comes back to the same
Well,
question as far as the, where is the
Yeah.
hierarchy within the departments and where are people at, what kind of stresses,
Yeah.
we can hopefully figure out information about what kind of stress that may cause, especially if people are moving. You do know, I mean, one thing that it seems very clear is that everyone that I've talked to, throughout the county and even those city services, but those that are providing services, especially in the, again, in health and human services, because people's lives are in chaos. At that point, they're not coming to us because they're going, oh, I think I want things a little better. They're in crisis. And but they care about the people and the job that they do, and I think that's very impressive.
Commissioner, you're right. If you look at the data that we have here, the administrative support has a significant decrease in number with respect to the change, 7 percentage points. So, but why is what we don't know, right? Yeah, but we can see that there's a difference there. So the question is, why do we have these numbers? That kind of a drop within the span of a year. And so that's something that with all of the other things that we've talked about, people are willing to speak to tell us why. We will be able to get those. We can do because 2025 is far out. I mean, the funding for that for the engagement survey is we want to be able to get data for 2024. So we might just do something internally, maybe use Microsoft Teams to develop something simple to get some information prior to the engagement survey, at least to have something. Do that in 2023 against 2024, so we can have data at least for 2023 to report. It may not be perfect, but at least it's a summary data that we can use as a benchmark for 2024. So what number will that be? Because I think
Yeah, depending on.
okay. So key takeaways. All right, so total staffing levels are about the same in the most recent 2 years and return to pre-pandemic levels. So we're still within the 3,700 plus. There is just about a difference of about 50 some employees between 2022 and 2023. Staff diversity increased rapidly over the past 20 years before stabilizing about 40% diversity in the most recent 4 years. So Ramsey County has seen the most diverse county staff in the state. And I think sometime last year, I did send the demographic data that was created by my MICA HR director group to all of you just to see some of the demographics in terms of our population as against other counties. And by you could tell that Ramsey County was way ahead when it comes to just the different benchmarks. We scored really high as compared to our colleagues in other counties. Turnover rate of 13.7% in 2023. The first in the past few years, the turnover rate is below 15%. It was 18% last year. So we've really done a good job there to bring it down. Our hope though is to bring it below 10%. I think that should probably be around 2018 range. To bring it below that and continue to decrease the number of turnovers that we have. Okay, let's go over to next page. I don't know what the numbers are. Man.
19 or 21?
All right, so organizational achievements, I will pass this on to Beth.
So we've done some great things in the past year, with our talent priority initiative. Where we've been plugging away at making things actually happen, and it will come to fruition this year. But one of the things that we did is we hired our affirmative action manager. That person, Francisco, will start April 29th, yeah. So we're really excited to have him on board to oversee the affirmative action plan. And that will help us to continue with our focus on the American Indian and Hispanic populations. We, as part of talent priority, have our talent acquisition team that Jessica Dan is responsible for. And that direction has been set and solidified with how we attract talent and how we go about doing that. And some initiatives are being put in place there to increase that outreach and that attraction of diverse candidates through how we do our recruitments, what the experience of that applicant is, how we support hiring managers in that process, and how we utilize technology and our resources to make the process smooth. So we've got some great changes coming with our talent acquisition team. Language to job posting that we have with inclusivity, making sure that that statement is front and center. People see that and know what kind of culture we're trying to build here at Ramsey County. We've already talked about onboarding, offboarding, and stay interviews, but we are also doing onboarding as well, which is the experience that a person's going to have coming into the county and being able to utilize that to set the tone, to understand the experience that they're going to have here at the county. So we can try to get in front of it on the front end and have a good experience there. We've also been working on our performance management system, so that there's actual continuous feedback from hiring managers, or managers in general, managers, supervisors to employees, and employees vice versa, back and forth, so that when you do ask the question, why are you leaving? We can answer that a little bit better. At least you can answer it for your department or your staff and the people that are there. So that performance management process. Leadership Academy, another initiative with Talent Priority, that is getting kicked off at the CLG, County Leadership Group, in the next couple of weeks here, where managers, also from managers and supervisors, will take 5 days of sessions training. I do have supervisors here at Ramsey County. It's centered around our value wheel that we have here. So each day is a different value that we'll be focused on. And we'll get some information out to supervisors to help them do their jobs a little bit better as well. What else is there? I think that covers a lot of this things. So hopefully that'll next year when we come back to do this, we'll have data to support some of that and some information on how things are going with those.
So to add to what Beth just presented, the performance management is a little bit inconsistent here in the county. Some do it, some don't. So hopefully with this and the leadership of our county manager insisting that this is a mandatory opportunity for all of us. But the way we're actually presenting this is more from the lens of a professional development opportunity for employees, less of the punitive mindset. So if an employee is not doing well, you will know. With the IDP, you will know. Part of that is to make sure there's a collaboration between the manager, supervisor, and the employee, so there's no surprises. You want to make sure that support is there. whether it's a professional development in terms of trainings, what they need to do. As a supervisor, I think it's important for us to be engaged in our employees and the employee also be engaged in their own development. So that process of identifying where you are, where you're going, and what it will look like is all part of the performance management. So strictly, so we're kind of changing the mindset in terms of how people think about it. It's strictly more of a professional development because people that haven't done professional development, sorry, I beg your pardon, performance management, what is the interaction and what is the expectation, between them and the manager? So it's to the benefit of the employee as well as the benefit of the manager to really know your employees and where their deficiencies are, where their strengths are. So that's what we're trying to do with this. It's a really simplified process of what we have. While the previous one, in some cases, you have your percentage increases, some don't do it at all. We have a structure within the county where you have a 4-year gap for some positions. What is the incentive of actually, wanting to do a performance management or performance review when I get no increase apart from the cost of living every year for the next 4 years? So we want to remove that mindset from there and just see it more as my development, your development, us working together and being able to identify where, your strengths and weaknesses are. So that's one for the performance management. Number two, I think you'd be excited to know that we're looking at bringing the Connect 700 program here. We have both the Title I and Title II programs in our ADA legislative opportunities there. But one thing I think we haven't done quite well is the Title II part of it. And so I connected with the state of Minnesota and spoke with, because I worked with the Connect 700 program at the state, and spoke with the director of the and the program at the state of Minnesota. So Eric will be coming in um, to meet with the HR team to provide just a general orientation. It's all part of our commitment, not only commitment, but it's a requirement for us to meet those conditions of Title II. And so it's a gradual process, but we will get there. And this is the first phase for that. There are other things that actually are attached to Title II. You bring employees with disability in, you also want to be able to have the services to help support those employees with disability. One thing that is missing for us here at the county, and hopefully with time too, we will get there, is the accessibility opportunity, the screen, how we view our screen, what kinds of fonts we use, what kinds of colors we use. So employees with disability will also be seeing exactly what we're seeing, but because of the accessibility inclusion, staff with that experience, they're able to help develop and format this information that also supports our employees. So apart from that, there's so many other things that we're going to be looking into. We have recruiting our ADA coordinator, which was one of the positions that the board approved, as well as the affirmative action officer. So we're recruiting the ADA position. The ADA position will be with the affirmative action officer. So that's alliance in terms of the work we do. We'll be reporting to the affirmative action manager. So that alliance in terms of what we do. And the affirmative action report, I did the affirmative action report. I was the affirmative action officer last year. So I did the affirmative action report, but this time around, because that also, the affirmative action report requires the development of a recruitment plan in line with the affirmative action report. So there you have all your demographics. You have the veterans, you have employees with disability, you have women, you have men, you have, minority, all the demographics in terms of racial and ethnic minorities. So these are things that we're going to put in focus. All of these different little changes that you're seeing are ways that we're trying to make sure that we increase those numbers, but also make sure we're meeting the requirements as stated by the legislators.
The last thing that we didn't have, statewide, they've moved away from requiring college degrees, and I know some departments are doing this better than others. We don't have a holistic Ramsey County plan. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, so we've actually started the implementation of that even before the legislators passed that, right? About more than a year ago, we started looking at experience. When I first started, we actually made some changes to if you have associate degree, will be considered, and we're requiring maybe an associate degree or a bachelor's degree in that area. You have an associate degree and you have 10 years experience, that would substitute a bachelor's degree. So we're already using the experience part in most of what we're looking at. So we made those slight changes in terms of how we recruit our employees. So within human resources, we've done that. However, though, we continue to support and provide guidance to managers and supervisors because departmentally they provide those structure in terms of what they need. If a position is really difficult to hire and there's really no point of having a degree, then we want to make sure the manager is aware so that we can remove that degree part of it. And maybe the manager can look for something else. If the experience is what we're going to use and the experience is what we're going to use. But it's advice to the department that we give from human resources when we have some of those challenges.
Are you seeing that departments are accommodating that, or do you see resistance in the
think it depends. You know, it's, people value their jobs in different ways and also have their own perspective of what I think I need in a position versus what you actually do need. So we do spend time trying to get through to them that, do you really need that? There's a few positions that just pop in my head that I know we've been pushing pretty hard to say, why don't you do a substitution? Why don't you look at it a different way? Why don't you try some different methodology? So it's really just trying to change individual hiring managers' mindsets and whittling away at it over time.
Thank you. Yep, I'm gonna vote on it. Yeah.
So along that line, I think I heard, or I thought we had, that we were actually looking at all of our job descriptions so that they would be more aligned with what was really happening and what we needed in as far as hiring people. So is it sort of being done department by department then, or, I mean, it's just still being done then? We're not, it's in process,
So
right?
it is
Yeah.
because there's no, the legislators did pass the bill. However, there was no specifics to it. They just gave organizations the opportunity to make those decisions. Yeah. So while we in human resources have done that even before, like I said, even before the passage of the bill, we've already put that as part of our process. Departments are gradually identifying, we give feedback. Some people really like those degrees, right? Some positions may actually require those. Some may actually not require those. So it's providing those feedback and saying, do you want to look at the experience, right? Instead of looking at degrees, because we'll have people with 4-year bachelor's degree, no experience. And you have someone with without a bachelor's degree and has 20 years experience. And the position shouldn't really require a bachelor's degree or whatever. So it's a mindset thing, something that's been there for so long. It might take a while, but some are actually making those changes.
So I feel like, I don't even know there was legislation. I just feel like we did it as a board, like we decided. Or did we do it because of legislation?
We haven't done it.
We haven't.
We have individual gatekeepers in departments and
Oh.
offices.
It's the state, yeah.
The state,
We don't.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we had already.
We've
done it.
encouraged human resources,
Yeah.
human resources doing it, but it's.
One other question. Connect 700. I guess I'm just not in the
Yeah.
HR language there.
So Connect 700 is a state program. Actually, it's the state governor from the governor's office, and in conjunction with Minnesota Management and Budget and other departments within the state of Minnesota, started Connect 700 during Governor Dayton's regime. And the intention was to increase the number of applicants with disability into the workforce. And so what that does is, and that was when Governor Dayton also said, you must have a certain percentage of racial and ethnic diversity within your organization. If you hadn't done that, that wouldn't have happened. So a lot of the agencies within the state intentionally started, making that as a focal point. Even most of them didn't get up to that number. I think it was about, if I'm not mistaken, 15% or thereabout. Most of them didn't get up to that number, but it actually increased the number of diverse employees within the state of Minnesota. The Connect 700 program, you have 700 hours within your, you have 700 hours as part of your probation. But the difference there is when you have an employee who is in the Connect 700 program, they're the first group of people during a recruitment process. They're the first group of people, as long as they meet those minimum qualifications, they're the first group of candidates that will be interviewed. And if the supervisor finds them to be qualified, did well during the interview, you will have to hire them. So the focal point is they have preference? Yeah, they have preference. It's also to remove the whole issue of bias and discrimination. There's some disability that are seen, there are some disabilities that are unseen. And one of the biggest fears for people with disability that are unseen, they would not indicate that they have any form of disability for fear of, you know. And but the fit ones with physical disability, you can see that, right? And you don't have I mean, by judging from the number of employees with physical disabilities that we have within the county, there's not a lot. And you can see why employees that have disabilities that are unseen will hardly tick the box that they have disabilities. This right here helps to resolve some of those biases.
We took that one, and I know we're good, one other question, we can take it, I can get more details offline, but for like leadership program, are we doing it internally, or are we bringing in an external?
Oh,
for
no,
the 5 days,
this is internal.
this is all, so we're not bringing in an external program, or anything, you're just designing it.
Yeah.
No, the human resources staff along with some other departments within, the county, like finance, IT, policy,
Legal,
planning,
policy planning,
legal, are developing their own
ethics and
content,
compensation.
through, the DIOD, our diversity inclusion, team that is involved about organizational development. So we're using our talent priority, project coordinator to coordinate that, along with the other talent priority projects. But all the content will be delivered in person by subject matter experts that are Ramsey County employees.
I just want to put a plug in that the leadership programs that are developed, like NACO has a high performance leadership academy that kind of encompasses 200 people. I mean, we have leadership programs that we can access that may be appropriate for our staff, that we don't have to do all of it internally.
So the good news about it, and that's very important too, because staff will always require development. But the good thing about what we're doing with our leadership academy actually speaks to our core different areas, like recruiting. How do we recruit here? What is your responsibility as a manager supervisor? Ethics and compliance, respect for workplace. What are ethical responsibilities within? That's something somebody else can't teach us. Yeah, but or legal. Jada comes in and gives a presentation on what we need to do to avoid, any kind of lawsuits and things like that. And then you also have policy and planning. They come in with the policies, because one of our biggest areas is realizing that not all employees actually read our policies, but also now compliance is making sure there's an attestation page. So people sign off on those. So those little things, it's really to empower managers and supervisors so they are more competent and more skilled in what the general operational practices are within the county. The leadership academy you're talking about is beyond our own internal processes, which is very, very useful too. And if maybe you and I can probably speak after this and give that opportunity to our managers and supervisors to access as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions on?
I have several questions, so I'll try to keep them brief as much as possible. For hiring managers, like director, supervisor roles, are they required to, for their leadership development, are they required to attend like the foundational learning that was offered last year too?
Yes.
I believe, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
all
Yes,
employees are
everyone, yes,
required to
to-
attend.
Yes, the
training.
requirement.
Part of the employee.
We have a phone assigned for
Yes.
Yes.
Respecting policy that will formalize that as a requirement. As part of new employee orientation.
So it's not in.
It's not a requirement.
Not
But it's in
Okay.
practice for.
Okay, and at least people will be tracking that and making sure that like our leaders. It will be part of the process of developing policy and
Okay, we have a learning management system that tracks training for all employees, so supervisors can pull data on employee compliance with county training from the HR. For that too.
And I'm also assuming that like all hiring managers are that too, that those are. And I would just say like for future, for, the county, like our HR is to like continue to look at the trainings that are offered and how, it is being developed and, how it changes also too about like information that we learn. For example, today we just, for the first time ever acknowledged transgender, right? And like, how are we, making sure that, we are creating workplaces that are inclusive of all of gender identities, as well as, the neurodiversity, we acknowledge that last week too. So, these are just all things that I want to make sure that we are following and we are implementing. And then finally, to the question of what Commissioner McGuire was saying, like, we should be following like our own like values with what we're trying to say about like at least removing barriers to the employment. What will it take to move that type of policy here at Columbia?
Oh, well, I think that we need to draft policy. I think policy and plan is nodding. I'll tell you, I look at every job posting in the county and I qualify for 0 of them. Not one have I ever qualified for as the board chair. I cannot apply for a job in them. And I look at every one of them and I'm like, oh, this is a problem. And so I do think that this is a place that we need to implement policy and no longer leave it up to individual. If it doesn't require a licensure because of state requirements, I don't think we should require degrees.
Just to add to that data point that I was looking at earlier about, that 65% of the folks who separate and like not voluntarily, is very concerning. Because like I said, it either points to mismatch in skill set, which our job posting is not accurately reflecting, or the culture. Absolutely. So, those are the two pieces that, I'm really concerned about. And then finally, what about like the language skills? Have we, revised or looked at that policy about like, language skills, that, should be fairly compensated for jobs that, interact, our population that is very diverse?
That's going to go to the bargaining table. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I do think it's important. One of the things that I really like is that everyone is included in the trainings and including me. And so if to learn and to be a good employee for Ramsey County, you need to know those policies. You need to know what is going on around you. And so I really appreciate all the work that's gone into that training project. I do think that, yeah, we need a policy that really basically does what the state. But I do think it's interesting right now because to hire or kick off a process for hiring the new MELSA, the Library Services Director. And it's the Minnesota Department of Education that is balking, and some of the things that they come back with were like, really? You want us to do different processes or whatever? Simply because they want to have this master's in library science, which costs a lot of money, and it really isn't new. But is it something to have? Is it a good thing to have? Of course it is. But the argument that we are making, because it's absolutely legitimate, is that we can't get a diverse group of candidates. It's not going to happen because of the cost and because of what's happening. Maybe in the future we'll have more diversity with people that have that degree, but it's what was it? Senator Cooney, who has spent her life in libraries, doesn't qualify because she didn't spend the $35,000, which is probably worth more now, and the time to get that degree. I remember actually with the state that there was one job that I really wanted. This was a long time ago, where they required a degree, which really, I mean, it just wasn't, there were a lot of jobs at the state that required a degree. It was just like, you just put it on there right away. And so I wasn't even allowed to apply for it.
Okay.
Which, by the way, did also help me make sure I got my degree, and then I went on to master's and doctorate. So I showed them. Yeah. But it did give me, it's like, okay, is that really all that important? And it's not. Is it valuable? Yes, but it's not a requirement, and that's the part that is the big deal. And even so, the Department of Education, in this particular case, is really
Stalling, eh?
stalling is putting it mildly when you call out the Army on us. No, not the literal army.
Just for the minutes.
And even threatened, things as far as funding. It's really, and so you look at, so some of the things, when you talk about licensure, that's a very specific thing. But I can tell you that even at the state level, when you're trying to do things, it's still not an easy.
Yes.
Because people are used to, this is the way we do it.
Yep.
No. And I don't even know if, some people have said, well, why don't you put in preferred? Well, maybe you could. And that wouldn't be stopping people from applying. But we really need to make it part of the fabric of what we do, and not just, oh, something's come up, let's look at it and see if it's needed or not. So I don't know exactly how the state did it, but I think you're looking at a group of people here that are going to have a policy about that. So start thinking about how to do it, and something that the state did in a very positive way, then copy them.
The state actually hasn't made a lot of changes there.
Well,
The state is
they say
still, they say, but more than 90% of the state positions require a degree. It's a shame, but that's, it's passed, but they still haven't made the effort, because the agency have to make those, they have to be intentional about it. They have to look at their positions and go, okay, we don't need a degree here. We do need a degree here. Actually, when I was with the Department of Public Safety, some of our positions were really difficult to fill. We made, even before all of this, we did start using experience as an opportunity to hire employees into, this was DPS. Other areas, may not for all positions, but for some positions, but other areas within the state, I don't know, but till date, we still have a high number of those requiring degrees. Yeah.
Because the fact is, I've always said that this county board isn't one that just takes positions. We want action, and that's what we want here.
And to that point, our workforce development team should be at the table here. We just signed an agreement with the chamber, St. Paul Chamber, to help them with all the businesses in Ramsey County to get to a skills-based hiring and get away from degrees. And so if we're doing it externally, we have to do it internally in Leeds. I just want to put a punctuation on it. And so, I would also encourage our workforce folks to be in partnership in this area, because we're doing it externally, and it's hard to, if we're not walking the same talk. So, Commissioner Moran.
I'm gonna move it back to separations.
Yeah.
I was just looking at separations. It's kind of like really high based on numbers of who we have hired, right? And I mean, we have like 47% that are leaving. And whether it's been voluntary or voluntary, I think it doesn't matter because they're leaving, right? And so looking at the interviews that we're doing, talk a little bit more. I was in myself, I left a position that I felt like I never expected, they didn't value me. There's some things that's going on, and I do an exit interview. Am I going to really say that? Right? Probably not, because I'm worried about that's going to show up and I need to get this job. I got to do nothing. So can you talk a little bit about what that process should look like?
For the exit interviews, the good news here, we've done some exit interviews in human resources. Some are just leaving just for, they're just leaving. Some are leaving due to
Some
other
that need to
issues.
leave.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But the good news here with respect to our automated process, you don't have to talk to anyone, so the anonymous, how do they pronounce the word again? You, so it's good for it's good for our employees that way, because they can go in, and the only people that will have that information is human resources. So they will go in, they will put that information. We have questions actually developed.
So there's two processes that we have in place. We have a qualitative process in place right now, where there's a list of 10 questions that are very similar to the state interview questions that we, as human resources, we know somebody's leaving, we encourage the hiring manager, keep saying hiring manager, the manager or supervisor or someone in that chain of command to reach out to that employee and use those questions, those 10 questions, those questions. So it's a more of a narrative, a little bit more of, you know, do you feel like you were your true authentic self? Did you feel that you were supported? Some more of those types of questions. The qualitative interview, interview process that's going to be in the NeoGov system is much more check the box that says the reason why you're leaving, and we give a list of options for them to choose. Do you agree with this statement? My supervisor will support. I agree with this. I strongly agree with this statement. I strongly disagree with this statement. So it's more of that kind of survey type questions about work environment, about supervision, about the work that they did, pay, compensation, benefits. So you get both stories if you do both sides of the coin. But we can adjust things like I didn't, my supervisors, I don't agree with my supervisor supported you. Okay. Well, why is EGCI, sorry. EGCI, why is everybody checking that they don't like their supervisor? They don't feel supported by their supervisor. Let's do some work there. So it's a little more of things that we can control in terms of, oh, they don't like our benefits packages. Let's renegotiate their benefits and open enrollment the next year. Let's look at our compensation. So it's, if that makes sense.
So for me, for clarity, for me, so there's an exit interview that's done by the supervisor. That's one piece of
Optional.
it.
Yep, yep,
And then there's one that's done by HR.
yep. And there'll be a link, our NeoGov system, that is our applicant tracking system. It will be our performance management system. It is our onboarding system, also an offboarding system. So the survey will be built. When we get notice of the termination of somebody leaving, we'll trigger a notification in the system to the employee and says, click on this link and take the survey.
Yeah,
Done.
immediately.
So, with all the changes, of creating a more inclusive type environment where you're going, you know, where you're going through a process that makes people feel more valued. Hopefully they respond at the end. You know, but for those, I know I wouldn't, if I was disgruntled with my supervisor, or I feel like she didn't, you know, wasn't responsive to my concerns, I wouldn't do that, right? Because I feel like I might need a reference, or I would not send that back to that supervisor. Maybe HR, if I'm not putting a name on it. And it's a blind like response, and you know, so I think, is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Happens.
Exactly. The only thing we're asking some demographic information of which of the 5 departments you work in, because we need to disaggregate it somehow. So we can know where the feedback's coming from a little bit, but, you know, that's always the problem with people not believing it's confidential, but you can skip questions if you're uncomfortable asking them. It's not required that every question is filled out. So depending on a person's comfort level, they can skip over if they need to.
I think as long as they cannot be identified.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important. Because as we look at those who are exiting, those who are coming in, and we look at the total employees by race and ethnicity, and those who are leaving out, I think those numbers are really, really high. Right, and so you want to be able to tell a story. You want to be able to go back and see who and where those exits are happening. Which is why I really like Victoria, Commissioner Reinhardt suggesting that we are beginning to see a picture of what departments.
Well, thank you. We are just at time. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think we've laid out some future work to move ahead, and we appreciate this you know, kind of starting place as we do better internally and to make our workforce more diverse, but also to make sure that we have people who want to work here and stay here, and when we don't, we can do that. So, I just want to say this out loud, so it's said at one point, I actually think this is going to be a really difficult hiring year. We've seen a lot of transition, not just in Ramsey County, but across the region in government. People are moving lots of places. And so I think our numbers might not necessarily always tell a positive story. It's about the story over time. As long as we have that narrative and we're thinking about that, we're going to see some more movement into leadership and movement across departments. Hiring has become way more competitive, I think, and salaries and stuff are changing pretty drastically across the region. So I think that we just have to be ready for it and be prepared. So, yeah.
And the trend in the market too is a lot of it too has to do with what we're seeing. A lot of it has to do with remote work. A lot of people are wanting to work remotely, and some are ready to take pay cut to work remotely. You have applications for remote work, actually over 100 applications sometimes for remote to work remote, followed by hybrid. Then in office is a lot lower. Where we used to have, let's say about 80, 90 applications. Now we're having like 20 some, 30 applications. So you see the difference. But when you look at remote, same position in another company or organization, remote, it's over 100 applications. So you see the trend. LinkedIn actually does provide some of that information that you just see on LinkedIn. So that too is creating a lot of some challenges.
It's challenges, but our challenge then as government is, as we think about service delivery, it doesn't equate. So we're not competing in the market the same way. So we have to think about how do we make sure that we're not sacrificing one for the other. And
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, just so you know, I'm going to say,